From the outside, my life looked perfect. A steady job. A girlfriend I'd been with for 3 years. A best friend who'd stood by me since high school. People used to joke that I was the lucky one, the guy who had it all figured out. And for a while, I believed it too. She was the woman I thought I'd spend forever with. He was the brother I never had. Together, we were inseparable. Movie nights, road trips, birthdays. I trusted her with my heart, and I trusted him with my life. But nothing shatters a man faster than realizing the people he trusted most were the ones holding the knife. The truth didn't come out in some dramatic showdown. It came quietly in fragments, a strange message, an excuse that didn't fit, a late-night whisper I wasn't supposed to hear. And when the pieces finally came together, they formed a picture I couldn't ignore. She was pregnant. And the father wasn't me. It was him, my best friend. In that moment, the air left my lungs. It wasn't just betrayal from one person. It was betrayal doubled, layered, cutting me open from both sides. Most people expect rage in a story like this. They picture yelling, fists through walls, tears and broken glass. And maybe that's what they thought I would do too. Maybe that's what they wanted, for me to explode, to look crazy, so they could write me off. But I didn't. I stayed calm. My hands steady. My voice even. Because when betrayal cuts this deep, you stop thinking with your heart. You start thinking with clarity. And in that clarity, I made a promise to myself. I wouldn't give them the outburst they expected. I wouldn't let them twist the story. No, I would wait. I would gather everything. And when the time was right, I would make sure the truth came out in a way they could never escape. What I did next didn't just surprise them. It shocked everyone who saw it. For as long as I can remember, Ethan had been more like family than a friend. We met back in high school when most people were still trying to figure out who they were. Somehow, we clicked instantly. He wasn't just someone I hung out with, he was the guy who showed up when my car broke down at midnight, the one who lent me money when I was short, the one who cheered the loudest at every achievement I had. We built memories in the little things. Late-night study sessions where we'd order cheap pizza and argue over who was smarter. Weekend basketball games at the old park where the rim leaned slightly to the left but nobody cared. Long drives with the music turned up, both of us swearing the future was ours for the taking. He knew my secrets, things I'd never told anyone else. I trusted him with the pieces of myself I kept hidden. He wasn't just my best friend. He was my brother. When I met Maddie, I couldn't wait to introduce her to him. She was beautiful, sharp, and had this easy way of making me laugh when life felt too heavy. I remember the first night she joined us, the three of us crammed into my living room with takeout containers scattered everywhere. She laughed at his dumb jokes, and he teased her back like they'd known each other forever. I felt grateful, like my two worlds had collided in the best way possible. The woman I loved and the friend I trusted most seemed to fit together seamlessly. The three of us became inseparable. Movie nights at my apartment, double dates at new restaurants, even short road trips where we'd blast music and argue over playlists. To me, it felt perfect. I trusted him like a brother. And I trusted her with my heart. But little cracks began to show, cracks I didn't want to see. Sometimes, when we were all together, I'd catch their eyes lingering on each other a little longer than necessary. Or they'd burst into laughter over some inside joke I didn't remember being part of. Once or twice, I'd walk into the room and find them talking in low voices, only for the conversation to stop abruptly when I appeared. I told myself it was nothing. After all, why wouldn't I trust them? These were the two people who mattered most in my life. Why would I suspect betrayal in the people I loved the most? But doubt has a way of creeping in quietly, like a draft under a closed door. One night, after dropping my girlfriend home, I noticed something that made my stomach knot. Parked down the street from her house was a car I knew better than my own. My best friend's car. I slowed, staring, my pulse thundering in my ears. Why would he be there at that hour? The next day, I asked him casually. He didn't even blink. "Oh, I was just visiting a buddy in the neighborhood," he said with a shrug. His voice was steady, convincing. I believed him. Or maybe I wanted to believe him. The thought of my best friend lying to me, of my girlfriend sneaking around, was too painful to entertain. So I tucked the doubt away, burying it under layers of trust. But looking back now, I see how blind I was. The signs were everywhere. In the glances, the sudden silences, the excuses that didn't quite add up. I ignored them all, because sometimes the truth feels too heavy to carry. And so, I carried the lie instead. The truth came out in the most unexpected way. It was a Tuesday afternoon, one of those dull, gray days when work had drained every ounce of energy from me. I'd left the office early, hoping to get a nap in before heading to the gym. My apartment was quiet when I opened the door, the kind of stillness that usually meant I was alone. I set my bag down on the counter, loosening my tie, already imagining the relief of closing my eyes for 20 minutes. That's when I heard it, a faint sound, muffled at first. Whispering. It was coming from the bathroom at the end of the hall. At first I thought maybe the TV had been left on, but as I stepped closer, the whispers sharpened into voices I knew too well. Her voice. Then his. My heartbeat slammed into my ears so loudly it felt like the walls were pulsing with it. I stopped just outside the door, the smell of her perfume hanging faintly in the air, mixed with his cologne, a scent I'd never noticed in my apartment before. I leaned closer, holding my breath, and the words that came through the door sliced straight through me. What if he finds out? The baby isn't his. For a second, I thought I'd misheard. My mind rebelled against the sound. The baby? Not mine? Her voice trembled when she said it, but his was steady, low, reassuring. We'll tell him when the time's right, he murmured. He'll come around. He always does. My knees nearly buckled. The world tilted sideways. My girlfriend was pregnant. And the father wasn't me. It was him, my best friend. Every instinct screamed at me to throw open the door, to demand answers, to unleash the fury building in my chest. I could almost see it, their startled faces, their stammering excuses. But then another thought cut through the rage. If I went in now, they would lie. They'd twist the truth, gaslight me until I doubted what I'd heard. They'd make me question my own sanity. So instead I stepped back. Slowly. Quietly. My hands were shaking, but my mind was already shifting gears. This wasn't a confrontation. This was evidence. I reached for my phone like it was a lifeline. My thumb hovered over the record button for a split second before pressing it. The screen glowed faintly in my palm as their voices filtered through, every word burning into my chest like fire. Do you think he suspects? She whispered. No, he said quickly. He's too trusting. He won't see it coming. I swallowed hard, the taste of metal in my mouth. I stayed there for another moment, recording, then turned and walked away, each step careful, controlled. Back in the living room, I stared at the phone in my hand. The recording time ticked upward. 20 seconds. 40. 1 minute. Proof. That night, lying flat on my back in the dark, I stared at the ceiling and listened to the recording over and over until I could recite their words by heart. My hands were cold but my mind was on fire. For years, I had played the role of the good man. The trusting man. The man who gave people the benefit of the doubt. But as their voices filled my bedroom like ghosts, something inside me shifted. I realized this wasn't just betrayal. This was a conspiracy, one they'd built right under my nose. And I wasn't going to give them the satisfaction of an easy escape. I didn't sleep that night. I stared into the dark, plans forming like shards of glass coming together into a weapon. Confrontation would only let them cover their tracks. But patience? Patience would let me gather everything I needed. By dawn, my decision was clear. I wouldn't confront them yet. I would wait. I would watch. I would plan. And when the time came, everyone, not just them, but everyone who mattered, would see them for who they truly were. Over the next few weeks, I became an actor in my own life. Every day felt like walking across a stage built out of glass, careful not to make a sound, careful not to let the mask slip. I smiled when I wanted to scream. I laughed when my chest felt like it was caving in. I kissed her cheek when she came home late. I fist bumped him when we met for coffee. On the outside, nothing had changed. On the inside, everything had. Every little detail I documented. It started small, a screenshot here, a saved voicemail there. But soon it became second nature. Screenshots of late-night texts she sent under the guise of working late, when she was really texting him. Receipts from hotel stays under his name, printed from the email confirmations I'd found. Whispered conversations I recorded when they thought I was asleep, their voices soft and conspiratorial but clear enough for my phone's mic. I cataloged everything like a meticulous archivist building a case file. Their lies piled up like bricks, building the walls of their betrayal. She told me she was just feeling tired lately. He told me he was working extra shifts. I nodded and smiled, playing the part of the trusting boyfriend, while inside me something colder was taking shape. It didn't break me. It strengthened me. The act of documenting their betrayal felt like building armor. Every screenshot, every receipt, every recording was another plate in the suit. They thought they were weakening me, but they were teaching me, preparing me. I confided in no one, not my parents, not my siblings, not even the friends who would have told me to just leave. I couldn't risk someone tipping them off, even accidentally. The only person who knew was Jordan Reyes, a cousin who had always been like an older sibling to me. One night, after a week of gathering evidence, I drove to Jordan Reyes's apartment. The city outside was loud, neon signs and car horns, but inside their living room, it was quiet. I spread the evidence out on their coffee table, screenshots printed and clipped, photos on my phone, audio recordings playing from a speaker. Jordan Reyes sat silently through it all, their eyes moving from one piece of proof to the next, their expression hardening. When I finished, they leaned back, pale. "You can't let them get away with this," they said finally. "This isn't just cheating. This is calculated. They're using you." I nodded. "I know. That's why I'm not going to just leave." They raised an eyebrow. "Then what are you going to do?" I smiled, but it wasn't a happy smile. It was the kind of smile that comes from clarity. I'm going to make sure everyone sees who they really are. And so, I crafted my plan. The planning became my focus. It was the first thing I thought about when I woke up, and the last thing before I fell asleep. Work became a cover, errands became reconnaissance. My apartment turned into a quiet war room. I started building a timeline. Dates, times, locations, amounts. I linked bank statements to hotel receipts, texts to locations on their phones. I was building a story, and when the time came, that story would tell itself. I even rehearsed my reactions in the mirror, how my face would look, how my voice would sound. No one would see me lose control. No one would say I overreacted. They'd see the truth, raw and undeniable. The first step was gathering enough evidence to make denial impossible. The second step was choosing the perfect stage. That's when the idea of the dinner came to me. One evening, while she scrolled through her phone on the couch, I looked up from my laptop and said casually, "You know, we haven't celebrated your good news yet." Her eyes flickered with something I couldn't quite place, relief, maybe, or arrogance. "Good news?" she said, pretending confusion. "The baby," I said, keeping my voice light. "It's a big deal. We should celebrate with family and friends. A proper dinner." She smiled then, wide and bright. "That would be amazing," she said. "I was hoping you'd come around." Inside, I almost laughed. Come around. The phrase echoed in my head like a joke only I understood. A few days later, my best friend texted me, "Heard you're planning something for her. Need a hand?" I stared at the message for a long time, my thumb hovering over the screen. I could almost see his smug face, thinking he was orchestrating some master plan. "Sure," I typed back. "Could use the help." He sent a thumbs-up emoji. That night, I lay awake imagining it all. The table, the food, the people. Every detail would be perfect. They would think it was a celebration. They would never see the ambush coming until it was too late. In the weeks leading up to the dinner, I became almost surgical in my preparation. I updated my evidence folder daily. I created multiple backups, a hidden drive at Jordan Reyes's apartment, a password-protected cloud account, a USB hidden in my car's spare tire compartment. I even emailed key files to myself with coded subject lines. Meanwhile, I played the doting boyfriend. I rubbed her shoulders when she claimed to be so tired lately. I fist-bumped him when he said he was working extra shifts. I made small talk with both of them, my voice calm, my eyes steady, all while cataloging every slip, every lie. On the outside, I was exactly who they thought I was. On the inside, I was building a case so airtight it could have been a courtroom exhibit. I started leaving small hints around the apartment, not for them, but for me. Reminders that the clock was ticking. A gold envelope on my desk labeled, "Dinner Plans." A to-do list hidden behind a framed photo. Every time I saw them, it reminded me to stay patient. And patience was the hardest part. There were nights when she came home smelling faintly of his cologne, nights when he texted me from work, while she claimed to be at the gym. Every fiber of my being wanted to explode, to call them out, to end it. But then I'd think about the recording on my phone, the stack of evidence waiting in my drawer, and the vision of their faces at the dinner table. That vision kept me going. Finally, the plan was ready. The invitations went out, a group text to family and friends, a polite message to my girlfriend saying I wanted to celebrate our future, and a casual mention to him that I'd need help with setup. They both agreed eagerly. She thought I'd fallen for her story. He thought he was helping stage his own victory. The stage was set. The night of the dinner felt electric. Not the warm kind, but the tense kind that precedes a storm. Candles flickered, silverware caught light, and conversation hummed like a radio left on low. My living room was full, my parents at one end, her parents across from them, a handful of friends who'd seen us through small triumphs and mundane nights. Even he had come, wearing that easy grin like nothing was wrong, sliding into his seat as if he belonged at the center of this story. I waited until plates were cleared and the laughter softened. I stood, glass in hand, and let the room settle into that expectant silence you get before a speech at a wedding or before the lights go down in a theater. My voice was steady when I spoke. I want to toast to honesty, loyalty, and love, 3 things I thought I had. You could hear the fork drop. Eyes found mine. A smile played at my girlfriend's mouth for half a second before the expression fell away, replaced by something brittle. He swallowed, looked at me once, then away. I reached beneath my chair with calm, practiced motion and pulled out a plain envelope. It had been sitting there the whole evening, tucked in a way only I knew. On the outside, nothing special, just a manila envelope with no flourish. I set it on the table and slid it slowly toward the center, toward the space between them, where the truth would land. Inside were the pieces I'd spent weeks collecting, screenshots of midnight conversations, hotel receipts with dates that matched the times they'd told me they were apart, and printed transcripts from the recordings I'd made when I could barely breathe. The stack was neat, clinical. There was no dramatic flourish from me. I let the evidence speak. Her face drained of color first. I watched as her lips tightened and her hands went clammy. He clenched his jaw, the muscles moving in a way I'd seen 1,000 times in sports matches and arguments, but he said nothing. He had nothing that would stand against what I held. A gasp escaped my mother like a small animal. My father's face had gone hard, the lines that normally softened when he laughed now carved with disbelief. Across from me, her mother covered her mouth with both hands, eyes wide as if trying to keep the world from tipping. I reached for my phone and pressed play on one of the recordings. The audio filled the room, raw and small against the chandeliers, her voice trembling a little, saying, "What if he finds out? The baby isn't his," and then his reply, low and casual, "He won't. He won't see it coming." The words echoed in the silence like water in an empty pool. Sound has a way of making things real. It's different to hear it than to imagine it. The weight of those words landed on everyone, settling into the corners of the room. People shifted in their seats. Someone whispered, "Oh my God." She looked at me, eyes leaking the kind of shame that has nothing to do with tears and everything to do with being caught. He opened his mouth, searching for a response. For a moment, I thought he might try to deny it, to laugh it off like a bad joke. But denial would have sounded hollow against the receipts, the timestamps, the messages. He swallowed and the sound was small. I let the silence hang, heavy, then spoke again, quieter this time, each word deliberate. "Congratulations on your baby," I said, letting the bitter irony sit between us. "But the both of you? You're dead to me." It hit the table like a physical thing. Her mother cried out softly, Her father's chair scraped back. My friends' faces were masks of stunned confusion and sudden sympathy toward me. He stood up before anyone else, hands clenching at his sides, body rigid as a statue. The composure he'd worn for weeks was gone, replaced by something raw and animal. He tried to speak. His voice came out small, Z, but he stopped, looked at my parents, then at her, searching for an ally. No one offered one. Their faces had shifted in fast, private calculations, turning on him in a way I had never expected and, for the first time in weeks, truly welcomed. She reached for him like a lifeline, words tumbling out. Apologies, explanations, fragments of explanations that fell apart under the weight of proof. His eyes met mine once more, and I saw panic there, the first real thing I'd seen in his expression in years. He fumbled, stumbling over anything that might make this less than what it was. Around us, voices rose. My father asking how long, her father demanding the truth, a cousin stepping between people as if that might hold the world together. Someone pressed for phones, for receipts, for answers. He backed toward the doorway, lips moving but nothing making sense. I set my glass down carefully, as if it were an artifact, and walked away. My heartbeat was strangely calm, my mind uncluttered for the first time in months. Behind me, the room erupted into chaos, a sound I'd imagined and yet still wasn't prepared for. Chairs scraped, voices overlapped, accusations hurled into the air like thrown objects. I moved through that noise with a steady step, the stage I'd set collapsing into real consequences. I left them in the center of it all, in the fallout of their own choices, and closed the door on the noise behind me. Outside in the cool night air, the city breathed around me, indifferent and vast. Inside, the truth that I'd kept folded and ready had unfolded exactly the way I'd planned. The stunned silence that followed my departure was the sound of a life splitting open. The days that followed were a storm, but not for me. For them, word spread fast. Families talk. Friends whisper. And betrayal doesn't stay hidden when it's dragged into the light in front of everyone you care about. Her family was the first to react. I heard from a mutual cousin that her parents had disowned her, too disgusted to even hear her explanations. Her father, a man who had once shaken my hand with pride, refused to let her step foot in their home. Her mother cried in public, not for her daughter, but for the shame of realizing she had raised someone capable of that kind of deception. As for him, the fall was just as brutal. His parents had always loved me like their own son. They used to invite me to barbecues, cheer for me at games, and even call me when he disappeared for weeks, knowing I could reach him when they couldn't. But after that night, they refused to look at him. His father, a quiet man who rarely raised his voice, reportedly told him, "You're not the son I thought I raised." Their little secret hadn't just destroyed me. It had poisoned everything around them. Friendships collapsed. Families fractured. Their names became associated not with love or loyalty, but with betrayal. Meanwhile, I found peace. I blocked their numbers. Deleted every photo. Changed the locks on my apartment so I'd never have to worry about seeing either of them at my door. The gifts she had given me, the shirts, the watch, even the framed picture from our first trip together, I donated. Not out of spite, but out of cleansing. My home needed to breathe without her ghost clinging to its walls. The first morning I woke up after all of it, sunlight streaming through my window, I realized I'd slept deeper than I had in months. No paranoia. No waiting for footsteps in the hall or whispers behind doors. Just quiet. A kind of quiet that felt like freedom. Of course, there were reminders. Their names popped up in conversations I didn't expect. Friends who hadn't been at the dinner texted me, asking if the rumors were true. Some looked at me with pity, others with awe. I learned to let the pity slide off me and accept the awe. Because the truth was, I hadn't been destroyed. I had been deliberate. Weeks later, I bumped into an old friend I hadn't seen in a while. We ran into each other at a coffee shop. He clapped me on the back, grinning. "Man, I heard what you did. The way you handled it, I've never seen anything like it." At first, I didn't know how to respond. Did I want praise for something born out of heartbreak? But then I realized it wasn't just about the betrayal anymore. It was about what came after. About not letting two toxic people rewrite the story of my life. And in that moment, I understood. I hadn't just walked away from them. I had reclaimed myself. The aftermath for them spiraled quickly. I heard she tried to move in with him, but his parents refused to allow it. Without family support and with most of their friends keeping their distance, they became isolated. People stopped inviting them places. They were no longer the fun couple everyone liked to have around. They were the cautionary tale whispered at parties. He lost his job a few months later. Apparently, his boss didn't like the kind of attention that followed him after the story spread. If you can't be loyal to your best friend, one coworker reportedly said, "Why should we trust you with clients?" As for her, she moved out of the city. Rumor had it she tried to rebuild her life somewhere else, but it's hard to escape the shadow of choices like that. A reputation once shattered doesn't repair easily. But me? I wasn't bitter. Not anymore. I focused on rebuilding my life brick by brick. I started going back to the gym regularly, not because I needed to prove anything, but because the rhythm of lifting weights and running miles gave me clarity. I reconnected with friends I hadn't seen in years, people I had unintentionally drifted from because I had invested so much of myself into the wrong relationships. I even picked up painting again, a hobby I'd abandoned when life with her grew too consuming. My apartment filled slowly with color, strokes of blue, streaks of gold, the mess of creativity splashed across canvases that no longer had to be hidden away. For the first time in years, I felt like myself. Looking back, I realized betrayal had been both the cruelest wound and the greatest gift. It stripped me raw, but it also forced me to see the truth, to shed dead weight I didn't even know I was carrying. People often talk about revenge as a moment, that one dramatic scene where you get even. But for me, revenge wasn't just that dinner. Revenge was waking up every day after it, lighter, freer, no longer chained to lies. Her baby may have been his, but the life that followed? That was mine. Untangled. Unapologetic. And the best part? I didn't just survive what they did to me. I thrived because of it. I didn't just walk away from two toxic people. I reclaimed my life. That night at the dinner table, everyone expected me to explode, to shout, to throw things, to completely fall apart. But instead, I did something far more powerful. I let the truth do the work for me. It wasn't my anger that destroyed them. It wasn't my words, or even my presence. It was their own voices, their own actions, laid bare in front of everyone they had lied to. And for me, the most satisfying part wasn't the stack of receipts, or even walking away with my head high. It was that single moment of silence, when their own words from that recording echoed through the room like a verdict. They condemned themselves without me ever raising my voice. Now I want to know, what about you? What moment in this story hit the hardest for you? Was it the instant their secret came out? The way their families turned against them afterward? Or was it that final moment when I told them they were dead to me and walked out? Tell me in the comments below. I read every single one, and your perspectives always add another layer to these stories. And listen, if you thought this was shocking, trust me, the next story will leave you speechless. Because sometimes betrayal doesn't just come from the people you love most. Sometimes it comes from where you least expect it. You don't want to miss it. Make sure you hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and tap the notification bell so you're the first to when we release another video.